Hey YouTube, welcome back. This is Tuesday. We just got the Ultimatum Path of Exile content update. This is the patch notes for Ultimatum League. We don't have level 20 gems yet, but we do have the manifesto, which came out yesterday. I want to give you my list of things that I think are most impactful in case you haven't been here for the past 3.5 hours of me reading through all of this and discussing it with chat here on Twitch. So I've got my notepad here. Let's pull this up. This is not a list of the most impactful changes because the things like Harvest, you probably already know about because those have been discussed for a very long time. So these are the most impactful changes that I see in the patch notes that are new right now. So first up, Xana Maps. When you find Xana in a map, she offers you a mission. She's going to be half as likely as she's been in the past to offer you a unique synthesis map. As an SSF player, I always found that getting synthesis maps from Xana was really cool. It was really exciting. It was a way to get things like the unique synthesis rings or like maybe a bottle of faith that you wouldn't normally have access to as a SSF player. And I thought it was really flippin' cool that you would be able to do this. Unfortunately, maybe GGG just feels like it happened too often, so half as much. To counteract this, I moved this up from where it was mentioned in the patch notes. Something that is changing in the Uncharted realms, so that's like the hidden Atlas skill tree in the middle of the tree, in the middle of the Atlas. We have something neural pathways. It previously gave plus 0.5. Let me just hover over this right now in game. It previously gave a plus 0.5% chance for a synthesis map to drop from a unique boss of a map of tier 11 and higher. And the change to this is that now it's a plus 1% chance. So it's twice as likely there. It's much less, half as likely from Xana, so much less likely here. But just as a random drop that you can get when you're doing tier 11 and higher maps, it's twice as likely. So a little bit of power trimmed here and a little bit of power added here. I don't mind this too much. Seems like a nerf overall, but I still kind of like this. Crafts that have added random influences or random Atlas influences to certain types of non-influence items have been removed. In their place, crafts that randomize the existing influence on an item while also reforging it with new modifiers have been added. This means that if you keep an I-85 Stygian Vise in your stash tab so that you can someday hope to get Shaper influence on it, that's not a thing. You can't do that anymore. I used to really like this. I would use this as a way in SSF to try to get a Shaper shield on a specific base or try to get influence, maybe like an Elder Stygian Vise, something along those lines. So this is a significant nerf. It's a shift of power, but it's definitely a nerf, right? So you can't just have a shield, like have a I-86 Titanium Spirit Shield, and then hope to slam the right influence on it. First, you need to get influence on it, or find a natural item that has the influence, and then spin it from there. So this is a big change. Next up, rare Abyss jewels that drop from Abyssal Troves use the well-ruled modifier system. So like they're spun 10 times and the best outcome is given to you. Normally, the rare Abyssal Jewels are only there because you can ID them and scour them and then craft on them, assuming that they have the right item level for you. But now, if you have an Abyssal Trove, maybe that rare Abyss Jewel that you get at the end is good. I think this is great. I think this is a good change. Probably should have been there a long time ago, but honestly, this is a welcome change. I like this a lot. Next up, Veiled Modifiers. So when a veiled item drops in a map, you bring it back to your hideout, you talk to Jun, you control click on Jun, which brings up the unveil menu, which is a change for this Ultimatum League, which is awesome, by the way. When you unveil it, it no longer counts as a crafted modifier. So this is relevant for things that drop in maps that are veiled, and it also is relevant for the new Veiled Chaos Orb. Anytime that you're unveiling something, it does not count as a crafted modifier, which means you can add a crafted modifier on top of that. I think this is very, very cool. The Veiled Chaos Orb, we haven't talked about it too much, but like using that to craft in SSF or in Trade League, I think the Veiled Chaos Orb is awesome, and I really like this change as well. Very good. Note that Veiled mods, when you're unveiling them on an item, are they are better. They're like a tier higher, like tier 0. Higher than what you can apply on your crafting bench. So if you're unveiling something naturally, it's going to be a better mod. That's neat. I think it's great. Very, very notable. Next up here, I kind of laughed when I read this the first time. This probably upsets somebody, and in fact, it does upset people in chat, but I laughed because I don't know what else to do. So fractured fossils, they've been a source of frustration for a couple of people in the past. Fractured fossils, they now apply split modifier to both items, preventing further duplication. And we knew that already, as per the manifesto. As a result, fractured fossils can no longer be applied to items that cannot be split, such as synth items, enchanted items, fractured items, or influence items. So what are you supposed to use a fractured fossil on? I don't know. I don't know what you're supposed to use fractured fossils on. You can take a 6-link chess piece and you can fracture it, and now you have 2 6-link chess pieces, which is kind of like a new divine recipe that's been introduced in the game. That's about it. I don't know what you're supposed to use fractured fossils on besides that. I like nerfs, basically. I'm always happy to see nerfs in a game like GGG, in a game like PoE. I don't like nerfs that just remove things from the game. I would be fine with this being nerfed in any number of ways, and honestly, I don't really mind the fact that it's nerfed, but I don't like that the result of the nerf is that fractured fossils don't really do anything. And I don't like stuff in the game that doesn't really do anything. I might be missing something, but that's my opinion so far on it. Yeah, I don't know about this. Let's move on. Consuming an offering to the goddess in the map device now opens portals to a random trial of ascendancy in the Eternal Lab. With this, we knew about because of the manifesto, but this next piece is news to us. Trials opened in this way will not award an offering of goddess upon completion. So you can't just map until you find one trial, get the offering, go to your hideout, chain, Uber Lab. That is not how it works. However, what this means for you is that as you're mapping, especially in SSF, if you find the Trial of Burning Rage 4 times, you probably want to run it all 4 times, which is helpful because it does make progress toward Uber Lab. But man, I really don't like the Trial of Burning Rage. So it is what it is. But yeah, clarification, you will not get this if you put the offering in your map device in your hideout. Good, moving on. Modifiers, here we go. Modifiers that allow hexes to affect hexproof enemies, such as Cosby's Will and Unique Body Armor, will no longer apply your hexes, allow them to affect yourself if you have hexproof, as you are not your own enemy. This is the same thing that we saw during the manifesto as well, but I thought it was worth calling out. This applies to Headhunter self-cursed temp chains builds that use a self-cursed temp chains to make the Headhunter buffs last a super long time. The problem with that is eventually you're going to steal the modifier hexproof from an enemy, and you're going to lose your temp chains, which means that the duration of all your buffs is going to go back to normal. So it kills it, I guess, or you could just hope that you don't hit a hexproof enemy. But yeah, this is a direct nerf to the Headhunter self-cursed temp chains. Bladeful Blade Blast, it's still good. Blade Vortex. I don't think Blade Vortex is particularly meta. Someone in chat said, but Perry, it's like one of the most popular skills in softcore. And it's like, yeah, but like, it's Headhunter, right? It's Headhunter and Explodey and BV. And you're just using BV because it's a circle and you don't need to worry about aiming because you're already 17 times the size of your normal self. So I don't think it was really BV's fault for being strong. It was just like a good mechanical skill and it dealt enough damage. And it was Fizz converted to fire, Fizz getting Sector Fire, Fizz explosions, you know the deal. In any case, it did get nerfed. It got a duration nerf, which is not a big deal because of Unleash. It got a radius nerf, which kind of sucks. It got a % damage nerf, or effectiveness of added damage nerf, and a flat damage nerf. So it got a couple nerfs. But Val BV got some big buffs to it. It stores 2 uses instead of only storing 1 use. And then it got damage buffs as well. Honestly, just the fact that Val BV stores 2 uses means that when you walk up to a boss, instead of spinning 1 Beyblade on top of him, you also spin, I guess 2. You spin 2 total Beyblades and then yourself. So I think BV, if you want to play it, a lot of your damage has been shifted into Val BV for single target. But no, I think it's still fine. I don't think there's too many people out there who want to play BV. It is an enabler for like a zoomy playstyle. The build itself hasn't changed in like a very long time. I don't think there's much fresh and new about it, so I don't really mind seeing the nerfs here. But no, I think if you want to still play BV, it's still gonna be good. A lot of your clear is still gonna come from explosions of some sort, but Having the -2 radius, honestly, yeah, that does kind of suck, but I think it's still good. Moving on. Flesh and Stone, 35% mana reservation instead of 25. This is just something that's worth calling out. Flesh and Stone is kind of comparable in my mind to Skitterbots because it's just generically very strong for most builds. But yeah, Skitterbots at 35. Flesh and Stone is now also 35. Kind of sucks that they're kind of, you know, nerfing a form of defense that we otherwise have available as spellcasters. Because remember, melee characters already have Fortify and Fortify scaling. This kind of sucks. But, you know, it is what it is. It's worth talking about. Next one here. Summon Carrying Golem's Cascade has a 6-second cooldown from 4 seconds. The skill also travels a shorter distance and has less AoE. Summon Carrying Golem has good single target already. I haven't played this skill, but as per the people's recommendations in chat, they've said that this makes the clear speed of Summon Carrying Golem a bit worse, notably worse than it used to be, but your single target should still be fine. So again, worth calling out. Toxic Rain. I'm actually going to pull this up real quick. Toxic Rain is really interesting because it's one of those things that has been a very good league starter for a long time. And why would they nerf it? I don't know. Maybe it's out of line. So let's read this real quick. The spread range of spore pods from Toxic Rain is now affected by area of effect modifiers. This means that if you have more AoE, the spore pods that land on the ground are more spread out. So that means that instead of having such easy overlap, they're going to overlap less if you have a bunch of AoE as you build more AoE. The base spread range of the spore pods has also been slightly lowered, which means that they start out a little bit closer. So the spread range is affected by AoE, which means that it's also affected by negative AoE. If you have Conk Effect, it used to reduce... Okay, I'll use Microsoft Paint. If you had reduced AoE in the past, instead of having something like this, you would have something like this. And this is what Conk Effect used to do, right? This is what Conk Effect used to do. It would keep the relative distance of those 3 dots the same, but the area themselves would be smaller. Do you follow? Oh, I hope so. So in the future, what's going to happen instead is as you shrink the AoE, as you use Conk Effect, these 3 circles right here are going to move closer to each other like this, right? Which means that Conk Effect is actually an interesting option for Toxic Rain, whereas in the past, Conk Effect has been like pretty much a no-go. You just don't use it. It's not a very good choice. In the future, in Ultimatum League, Conk Effect actually is an interesting choice for single target damage. If you want to play Toxic Rain, I think it's still a very good place to be for a league starter, but Conk Effect should be an option for you for single target, whereas in the past, it wasn't an option at all. If Toxic Rain's like the kind of playstyle that you want to preserve, honestly, Toxic Rain's playstyle is about the same as Arrow Nova plus Caustic Arrow. So if you're interested in one, you're probably also interested in the other. But yeah, Toxic Rain, I don't think it's dead. I think it's like very fine, I guess. The movement speed, this is irrelevant. Who cares about this? But the fact that you have the option of using Conk Effect, I think is sweet. So let's go back to this and close this and don't save. Moving on, Vigilant Strike plus the Vigil. This is a significant, quote-unquote, nerf to hardcore, because the Vigil plus Vigilant Strike sees a lot more play there than in softcore, because it's a great way of keeping up your defenses for a very long period of time. It seems like, if I'm reading this correctly, that the top end of your duration, instead of spanning 40 seconds for Vigilant Strike, if I'm understanding this correctly, if you're using Vigilant Strike plus the Vigil, you're getting 20 seconds of Fortify instead of 40 seconds of Fortify. I'm pretty sure I'm understanding this correctly. 20 seconds is still a very long Fortify. I think this is still eminently usable. I think it's still a very good option. If I'm misunderstanding, you can blame me in the comments. My bad. I think it's 20 seconds. All right, next up, Diplomatic Escort. This is on the map here in Valdo's Rest. If you spec all 4 points like this, you can crash your computer. So in the future, instead of that being a possibility, they've changed it to now replaces one Harbinger with a King Harbinger instead of with a group of Harbingers. Is it still good? Maybe. I think it's... No, I'm not there. I'm not in the future like you are. I think it's still good, but more to the point, it's not going to crash my computer, and hopefully it won't crash your computer either. So this is a good thing to point out. Next up, you can no longer craft percent of physical damage converted to X damage modifiers on an item that already has this type present. This is a direct nerf to the 50% conversion gloves. I think what this means is that temple gloves slammed with a Crusader orb to get 50% is not a thing. It might mean that slamming temple gloves to get 50% conversion to an element is still a thing. I'm not clear, but I'm pretty sure that that's what this is referring to. But in any case, this is a good thing for me to point out and highlight as part of the patch notes here. Essences in general have been buffed. Pretty much all essences are just a little bit higher. Maybe like instead of 6 attack speed, they're 8 attack speed. Or instead of like 82 energy shield, it's like 85 energy shield added to an item. So pretty much everything got a little bump here. One thing that I really wanted to call out was Essence of Hysteria. I kind of made a joke about it when I first read it. But then as I continued reading it, I said, damn, those are actually some pretty big numbers. So Hysteria like this. Essence of Hysteria on a weapon. It has a cast Fire Burst on hit. It used to be a 10% chance to cast on hit. Now it's a 100% chance. It has a 1 second cooldown instead of a 0.5 second cooldown. But it's happening every single hit. Or I guess cast it on hit. Sorry. Okay. Added damage effectiveness of 340 up from 130. Remember, this is a spell. Fire Burst is a base radius of 24 up from 15. And the Fire Burst itself deals 1,500 to 2,200 fire damage up from 700 to 1,000. So they more than doubled the damage on this thing. And they almost doubled the radius on it. And they more than doubled the damage effectiveness. And they added crit and they made it happen all the time. But they put a 1 second cooldown on this. I don't really like building around things like this. It's just not really what I'm into. However, if you're into it, do it. This seems way less of a meme than it's been in the past. I look forward to seeing the kinds of builds that people use with this. This is totally worth highlighting. It definitely seems like less of a meme than it's been in the past. Next up, Abyss Jewels. Abyss Jewels are a great way of getting just a little bit of extra something in your build. Previously, they could roll 10% chance to avoid being stunned, which is fine, but you'd have to stack up a bunch of them or stack up other sources of being stunned to actually get stun avoidance. Abyss Jewels can now, in Ultimatum League, they can roll 17 to 20% chance to avoid being stunned. That is a big number. That's like 5 Abyss Jewels or 3 of these plus something else. Chance to avoid being stunned is a great stat because you're not always getting it. And like, if you're going to die, it's probably because you got stunned by something and then something else happened. Stun avoidance or stun mitigation completely is great. Trigger socketed spell when you use a skill. It used to have a 4 second cooldown. Now it has an 8 second cooldown. What's the ramification of this? I don't entirely know. I know it doesn't sync up with recently anymore because recently is the past 4 seconds. So you can have downtime of some sort, so it'll be less free. I haven't thought about exactly how this is going to affect my builds, but it's very notable because it's a 100% nerf, right? 4 seconds to 8 seconds, double. Unupgraded incursion uniques. These are like the boots or the trap gloves, things like that. Maybe like the one-handed sword that has physical damage, gain is extra, stuff like that. All of them are good. All of them have like reasonable text on them. The unupgraded boots have agnostic written on them. It's pretty cool. Go investigate these incursion uniques. They used to be just like, oh, this is a placeholder. I'll keep it in case I need to upgrade it someday. But in Ultimatum League, these uniques, like they're cool, they're interesting, they have their own things going on, and they're pretty cool. I think it's worth your time to go take a look at these and look them up. Probably should have put this at the very top of the list. Allies Cannot Die has been removed. My PC is slightly less on fire. To replace this, a new Benevolent Guardian Nemesis modifier has been added, which causes the monster with this modifier to apply a immunity buff for a short duration to all nearby allies. If the original monster dies, everything else loses the buff, and you can kill everything. Awesome. Just amazing. Hopefully this reduces all of the lag issues that come with Allies Cannot Die, or they used to come with it, because it was a miserable aura, and I'm glad to see it's gone. Good. This is straight buff. Next up is the Bullthorn skill. Bullthorn skill used by the Lieutenant of Rage in Lab, and the Crusher of Gladiators in the Race Course map. That was the bull, right? It's been visually updated, and it no longer has damage reflection. I think what that means is yeah, it doesn't have reflect. It doesn't kill me anymore. I'm unclear about whether this is exactly as good as I think it is, but no longer has damage reflection. I think this means that it's not reflect damage. I think I'm not going to kill myself to reflect anymore. And this is excellent. And the last thing here before we get to the bug fixes is the map device. One of the map devices, go read the rest of them yourself. You know exactly what these, or I guess we could go over these, but we're going to call out just the big one itself. So map device, Xana's map device, Fortune Favors the Brave, Essence, Breach, Bloodlines, Ambush, Harbinger, Heist. Great. Harvest. Harvest is 12 chaos, and it adds the Sacred Grove. From above, we know that anytime the Sacred Grove shows up, it's always going to be at least 3 crops. You're always going to have 3 things to choose from when you're doing the Sacred Grove. When I was asking questions to chat during the during Ritual League, people were saying that they would willingly play like 2 or 3 exalts just to get Harvest to guaranteed show up in a map. But that was like, you know, Ritual League, it was full on strength, 100% maximum power of Harvest. And I guess in Ultimatum, we're getting a tiny nerf because we're not going to have the same flexibility on influence items. But man, 12 chaos just to put Harvest in your map. I think this is absurd. I think chaos are going to retain a very high value. And economically, in Trade League, you might say that like the chaos to exalt exchange rate is going to reflect that. That Chaos Orb is going to retain a lot of value relative to exalts, in my opinion. All right, last thing here. I've been playing a lot of Kinetic Bolt on stream. Is Kinetic Bolt a league starter? Probably not. Probably not. So one of the bug fixes. Fixed a bug with Kinetic Bolt, dealing more damage than intended to enemies at a specific distance. If this is the nerf that I think it is, Kinetic Bolt... Did I really write Blast? Kinetic Bolt. If this is the nerf that I think it is, Kinetic Bolt has gone from being pretty cool and like a unique, interesting skill that you can league start in hardcore SSF and feel good about it, to not. If this is the change that I think it is about shotgunning with multiple projectiles, it's not very good. If this is a change that makes your single target feel bad and you can't just clear with Greater Volley and also single target with Greater Volley, if that's what this change is, then Kinetic Bolt's kind of a boring skill again. So maybe that's what the nerf is. Maybe that's not what it is, but it's definitely the kind of thing where I would say, yeah, don't league start Kinetic Bolt. Maybe you go test it out in standard first to see exactly what the extent of the nerf is and how it applies. But yeah, face value, I would just stay away from Kinetic Bolt. All right, so I told Twitch chat at the start of this video that I was going to allow them to just shout out recommendations. So let's do that now. Kinetic Bolt and Kinetic Blast are not the same. Believe it or not, Kinetic Bolt and Kinetic Blast are not the same thing. So Twitch chat, I'll give you just a minute here and I'll read chat and read it out to the video here. What are things that you are excited about that you want to tell YouTube about? Flame Blast, Ice Nova, Val skills. Let's show the Val skills real quick. Val skills got a lot of love here. Can we scroll down to where the Val skills are? Val Cold Snap has less duration lockout. Val Blade Vortex has 2 uses instead of 1. We said that Val Flame Blast is a lot of damage. Val Ground Slam, you can exert, and it has a bunch of damage on it. Val Ice Nova has tons of damage and has 2 uses instead of 1. What was another one we called out? Val Righteous Fire sacrifices 60% of your total life and energy shield instead of 30. It's kind of scary. This might be a scary thing to use. Maybe you don't want to use Val Righteous Fire all the time. Temples are tradable. That's a good one too. As you create a temple with Alva, we knew about this already from the manifesto. You get it from Alva and you can trade it to somebody else, which means you can trade a double corruption chamber and it lowers the relative chance of anybody getting scammed, which is fantastic. I think that's really good. All right, so sounds good. That'll be about the extent of the video. There's a lot of good stuff in here. Maybe you don't have 3.5 hours to watch the entire thing, but hopefully my little recap of what I think is the most important guides some of the decisions, or maybe not the decisions, but maybe it guides what you want to look up on your own free time when you are catching up with all these changes. So thanks, appreciate it. We'll see you next time.